Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this eminent session on digital transformation. We have seen that despite the enormous challenge posed by the pandemic, the digital transformation agenda for government organization has accelerated like never before. It is clear that technology is going to be a force multiplier for the public sector since data has become an integral part of governance. Therefore, we must track, monitor, and analyze government projects and welfare schemes. Today, I have an eminent panelist with me. I welcome Dr. Abhishek Roy, the head of SeMT, Department of Personal Administration and Reforms at Government of West Bengal. Welcome, Dr. Roy. I also have with me Dr. Avik Sarkar, visiting professor at Indian School of Business. Dr. Avik Sarkar leads public policy, technology, data, and governance at Indian School of Business. I'd like to start with Mr. Sarkar, Avik Sarkar. Dr. Sarkar, we have seen that from a data visualization perspective, there are key lessons from the pandemic. What do you think are some of the most important aspects that must be taken into consideration?
Yes, so thanks, Kanishk, and thanks to Tech Observer for taking up a panel discussion on this very important topic on digital transformation and government. I think data, we have been generating huge volumes of data, both in the private sector and also in government. This data have been lying in silos for quite some time. I think during the pandemic and also a few years before that, we have seen that governments, both the central and several state governments, have taken big steps in starting to analyze the data. Once you start analyzing the data, you can derive a lot of valuable insights from it, which will help you in understanding trends and patterns about the citizens and understand, say, what are the areas which are not getting certain facilities or any sort of insights that are there will come out. So the first step of doing that is to start with this data visualization. So data visualization is the first step. So when I will share some of the initial experiences that I had when I was heading the data analytics cell at Niti Aayog. What a lot of the government officials, and this is what I'm talking about in 2015-16, were used to doing is they're looking at data on, say, a printout or a paper, looking at the raw data, instead of looking at a charts based on that. At the moment you take that raw data, instead of seeing the numbers, because we are not very well trained, our eyes are not very well trained to look at numbers. Instead, if you see maybe a bar chart or a very simple line chart or a pie chart of the data, it helps you understand the trends very easily and quickly. So a lot of the efforts that went into was, say, looking at data of various states, various districts, and seeing what are the indicators that are across these different places. And looking at these indicators, it actually helped you a very easy way to find trends and discrepancies as we talk about. The other challenge that what we found is that looking at data from a multi-dimensional perspective, you can look at, say, one variable, two variable, but if you have to, say, compare, say, 4 or 5 different indicators or variables from the data, doing it with the naked eye just on the numeric values becomes quite challenging. The data visualization gives you those easy tools by which you can play around with this data, and you can analyze the data in this easy way, so that the trends that come out very easily across the data. So that becomes the very first step that government should use to derive the insights from the data. So there's a lot of work that has been done on that perspective. I worked extensively on the data on health and malnutrition, on energy data, on education and skilling data. Just by doing a lot of visualization, you can derive a lot of insights. Even during the pandemic, a lot of the movement pattern of people where the numbers were high, just by looking at not just the numbers, by doing simple visualization on them, it gives you a lot of insights. And also it's very easy to communicate to the people what these insights are. So I think data visualization becomes a very potent tool at the hands of policymakers for governments for analyzing data and also for disseminating information to the citizen. Instead of say giving them a list of numbers, if you just share a chart with them, they can grasp the insights very well.
Thank you, Dr. Sarkar. Dr. Abhishek Roy would want to get your views on this subject.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Tech Observer, for inviting me. With regards to this data visualization, actually West Bengal has been pioneer in this data-driven governance. In 2016-17 only we started data-driven governance. In fact, the new trend is towards real-time governance and predictive governance. So I'll briefly tell you about this, but with respect to this use of data, we started our e-challan devices basically for prosecuting traffic fines. So when we started this with a handheld device, initially it was a 2G device, then we started with a 4G device, wherein anyone who is conducting any traffic violation is penalized on the spot, and timestamp and lat long is being captured. We are also capturing the photograph of the vehicle with the driver for some evidence purpose. So huge data was captured using this, but it was of no use for the state to strategize the things. So what we did, we basically came with a visual analytics dashboard wherein the ADG traffic would just draw a line on the Google map and then create one basically one filter that okay, on this line it may be a straight line, it may be a road, it may be a orthogonal line. We'll select and then we'll just click and we'll try to understand what type of traffic offenses are happening on this area. Suppose on a area, if from night 10 to morning 6, the violations are more of drunken driving, or the violations are more of this no parking, strategic decisions can be taken. So this is how we started. Slowly with this traffic fine data, we also integrated the data with respect to the accidents. So accident data, traffic fine data, and we also have this camera-based, NPR camera-based detection such as RLVD, red light violation detection, and other camera-based detections were there. So we merge all these three data, and now we are trying to create one safety index on the road. This is not yet done, but we are planning that the way when in a Google map, when we write two locations, suppose we want to go from location X to location Y, Google map shows 4 different routes. One will be the best route and others will be slower by 5 minutes or similar ETA or something else. So our idea is to show them the safety index of the roads of the routes on the Google map. So it will show that this particular route is safer by 10%. This is dangerous by 20%. Similarly, whenever some black spots comes, black spots are the areas which is prone to accident, or some other area comes where the accident casualties are more, a small pop-up will come. Okay, you are entering into a black spot zone. Please drive cautiously. This is the plan which we are trying to do. Use the huge data. See, we have data in silos. Unless we use it, and unless we try to use it for our strategic decisions, it's of no use. So one more example I will give in during this pandemic. So for vaccination, we started one vaccination bot. So there was a huge demand for the vaccination, particularly people who have taken first dose were not getting the second dose. And in spite of a very good COVID app, there were people at the lower levels who were unable to get their bookings through COVID app. So the state government has one process of giving a tickets, basically tokens in the morning to the intenders, and then they can come and take the vaccines, which was a very cumbersome process, and also it was very lengthy, and which was creating a disturbance with respect to social distancing. So people used to stand in a queue right from the dawn, without any social distancing. They used to get a token. Again, they used to come again for a vaccination from 10 a.m. and then again there was a queue. So he was wasting 2 to 3 days to get a vaccination, and we were losing all those COVID protocols. So then we launched one vaccination bot. So I'm just giving an example of how data visualizations and data can be of things. So we then launched this WhatsApp bot wherein we asked the citizens to book their slots, right, sitting down at their home, and they were basically given one slot. With the slot allocation, they were supposed to get the vaccination without any waiting time. In fact, the waiting time was reduced to 0. Only the 30-minute wait time for the vaccination observations was maintained. Otherwise, if time is allocated to him, he will just go and get the vaccination. The problem started when one person started booking 5-6 locations. So they started getting 5-6 appointments in a view that they initially had a fear that even if they book, they will not get the vaccine. So they started booking 6 slots, 7 slots. As a result, my other slots were getting vacant. So then we came down with an option of putting down and blocking their bookings with respect to a mobile number and with respect to their some POI documents. So it was Aadhaar card or a voter ID card or something like this. With that also, they started booking 4 slots with 4 different documents. So one booking is with voter ID card, one booking with Aadhaar card, one booking with PAN number. And since all the 4, 5, 6 were allowed in COVID, we allowed that. So this created a lot of difficulty for us because there were 2 reasons. Others who were waiting to get the vaccinations were denied this with the vacant slots. And apart from that, then these vaccines has a slot of 10, which basically Covaxin actually comes in a slot of 10 files, and Covishield comes in a 10, and Covaxin in 20. So we has to wait for the people to come, particularly in the second half, because 5-6 slots are getting vacant. So what I mean to say that even if we have data, there's no synergy. So we need to, if Aadhaar card is a very good, Aadhaar is a very good initiative, but there are many challenges with Aadhaar. So we have data of the particular person, but unless and until it is mapped into a common people hub. So we are moving towards an enterprise architecture, basically in the architecture in all the e-governance sectors. Unless we create a common people hub with all their documents with us, the main real-time governance and predictive governance feature will not be achieved.
Many thanks, Dr. Abhishek Roy. How do you look at the next generation of technology such as artificial intelligence and machine learning for processing and analyzing data?
Okay, so as I told you that regarding real-time governance, the plan here is that the moment a child is born, his data will be captured from the hospital and it will be converted to a blockchain. Nowadays, what happens? Nowadays, any citizen visits a government office to get a certificate. So he has to visit number of times to get a normal certificate, be it a caste certificate, be it any other domicile certificate or any other certificate. Now, when he tries to use that certificate to get some benefit, the same certificate is sent back to the issuing authority for verification. And if there's a gap of 5-6 years, it becomes very difficult to get the reply without any follow-ups. The same guy will have to go back to his issuing authority and request them to reply back on the request for verification of those certificates. It's a very cumbersome thing. Initially, I'm running around the offices for 6 months to get a certificate. Then again, for verification, my entire application is held up. Now then I'll have to run around the offices to get the things. So the idea here is to get a certificate-less governance leading to real-time governance and predictive governance. So we have already started one blockchain-based birth certificate in one of the municipal areas. Basically in Newtown, we have started that. The idea here is that the moment a child is born, his data will be uploaded by the hospital authorities. And if it is a suppose a home birth, so there are mechanisms to upload those things in the systems. It's very rare now. So that data will also have the social status data of the parents, because the caste and other things will not change. Income may change, but then also we have the social status of that person. It will be captured there. It will be placed in a blockchain. Now, when he is approaching any school for admission, so instead of getting a birth certificate and other things, the school will become one of our verifying nodes in that blockchain. School will just request in our system, they will be allowed to, they'll verify the birth details. And if admission is granted, that admission data will also be captured there into the system. So the idea here is that the moment this guy's life cycle will increase, his class 5 result, his class 10 result, his 12 engineering results, all these things will be captured into the system throughout his life cycle. So now when he's applying for anything, since it's entire data is on blockchain, it's a single source of truth, we can just request the system with respect to that, a query will be raised in real time and a decision will be taken in the real time. For example, if he's applying for any job and if he's an SC/ST, based on his application, we'll just write a query whether the person is SC/ST or not, whether he's engineer or not. If he's engineer, what was his percentage, first class or not? Based on that, real-time decisions can be taken and the particular application will be processed. Now, moving forward, we are trying to go towards the predictive governance things, wherein what happens, we have different schemes. Government have many schemes and most of the citizens are not aware. So there have been many schemes to make the people aware about the schemes. But what happens if I'm not aware about the schemes? It becomes very difficult to get the actual and appropriate schemes. So since I have the data of the entire citizen, I'll give an example of our flagship Shri scheme, where the girl child are given some subsidy to avoid basically to delay their marriage and to help them basically encourage them for education. So what happens if any scheme has a eligibility criteria of suppose 10 years plus and any other criteria? So the moment any child who is coming into the ambit of that eligibility criteria, for example, if the girl becomes 10 years and other conditions are fulfilled, instead of C coming to the government will automatically, basically the system will automatically send an SMS to the person that, okay, so Mr. So-and-so, you are, or Mrs. So-and-so, you are, Ms. So-and-so, you are eligible for the flagship scheme. If you want to apply, just reply back with an SMS. No need to apply, nothing, because I have all the information of that particular citizen. So the moment we are getting a request, basically acknowledgement from the person that, okay, he or she is interested into the scheme, his entire data with respect to the particular scheme, a form will be generated in the real time and will be placed into the system wherein that scheme processing goes on. After that, the entire scheme processing will be as per the normal format. Government will decide on the basis of the criteria, whatever it is. Shri is given to all, but if there are certain criteria that something will be given based on percentage of marks and all these things, or top 20% or top 200 people will be given, those criteria will be fulfilled. And the moment it is approved, he or she will get an SMS, okay, you have been given this particular scholarship or whatever it is. Beyond that, if the banking details are available with us, it will directly be, the DBT will be done to that particular citizen. If not, we'll ask them to submit the banking details, wherein we can go ahead for these things. One more thing, since we are giving the scholarships, normally what happens, scholarships are given to promote education. As of now, if entire amount is given to a student, how he or she is using is totally a dark box for us. We don't know. So we can come down. Of course, legislations are required to create those buckets. With e-Rupee launched by the RBI, we can control those expenditures. So suppose 1 lakh rupees as a scholarship is being given to the particular citizen. So we'll restrict that out of this 1 lakh rupees, 10,000 rupees can be used for purchasing of books, 20,000 for laptop, 40,000 for your school fees, and balance for your suppose day-to-day activities or either traveling or for fooding and all. The moment it is approved, an e-rupee will be given. He or she will get a QR code, or we can also give the this virtual cards also. When this particular student is going to spend those amount to different vendors, the moment that limit is crossed, the amount will be blocked. So he or she will not be able to spend the entire 1 lakh rupees into the school canteens. The intent is not for spending the entire amount in school canteens. So this is the way we can control. So with this AI and ML, of course, everything will not be possible without AI and ML. With real-time governance requires AI ML. And apart from this, there are many other machine learning based applications which we are planning on the long run. Basically, very soon we'll be launching one this predictive analytics based COVID assessment and cataract assessment things. So with just a picture of your eyes, the app can tell you whether you have cataract or not, and if the cataract is there, what is the level of your cataract. So these requires, of course, data. Some data has been captured. The more the data will get, the better the engines will be there. And there are applications which we are analyzing as of now, wherein with just of a sound of your cough, system will basically predict your COVID assessment. We are not saying that we'll clearly say that your RT-PCR is the gold test. So basically, based on the sound, we'll say that you are vulnerable to COVID, go for RT-PCR test. This will be a preliminary screening to bring down the load on RT-PCR.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Avik Sarkar, I would want to get your views on this.
Yes, so I was listening to the very interesting discussions that Dr. Abhishek was telling about the great work that has been done by West Bengal government. Really heartening to hear about all this. So yes, I think emerging technologies, I think he touched upon quite a few of them, and he's talking from the ground. There are use cases that are happening of the use of emerging technologies, like say blockchain has been tried. This is one use case that I have heard about the birth certificate on blockchain in West Bengal. There are few states which are rolling out how blockchain can be used for land registry and keeping land records. There are a couple of universities, IITs and Delhi University, who have tried out how blockchain can be used for rolling out the university certificates, and the employer can directly verify with them, very in similar line to what Mr. Abhishek told. There's a lot of pilots that have been going on the use of artificial intelligence across various domains. In agriculture, it has become very prominent, because that's a sector where about 50% of our workforce is employed, and we have a lot of interventions on that, trying to tell you, and there's a range of things that are happening there. So there are some startups which are trying to tell the farmers what is the best time to sow your crop and what is the best time to reap the harvest. And so this is some sort of farm advisory which is coming through predictive AI. Then matching them to the nearest mandi or the market where they can get better value for their crop. So that is also happening in some places. So there is a range of things that is happening. Then what is the type of seeds that they can buy, what is the type of input that they can put on their crops. So a range of advisory on the farming side happening, on the agriculture side happening there. There's also good interventions happening on the healthcare side, like there is this Anganwadi workers who go and measure the height, weight, and head circumference of the child. And in some of the places, it is considered inauspicious to measure the child. So, so Wadwani AI has been working, particularly that I am aware of, in the state of Uttar Pradesh, where they take a 5-second video of the child, and based on that, they provide an estimate of the height, weight, and head circumference, which is working quite well, and also providing efficiency to the Anganwadi workers. So there's the range of areas, like say CCTV cameras and image technologies have been used in several states for improving and detecting most better detection of traffic violations. So range of use cases where this predictive technologies are being used. What Mr. Abhishek told was something very fascinating to hear about, on how they are using the different route options and giving a risk score for each of the route options. And that is something that is that we do not consider at this point in time. We only consider the time taken and to go from one place to other. The longer routes, there will be the risk associated with which that can be provided as an input to the citizens. That will be something that can be of huge value to the citizens. So there are these enormous areas where we can work on different use cases and work with them, and there are these opportunities for AI and ML are enormous, along with other things like, say, IoT, blockchain, and drones and other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarkar. My next question is, what have been the major challenges when it comes to data-driven governance and how that can be addressed? Dr. Avik Sarkar, would want to get your views on this.
Yes, so I think one of the major challenges, or the first step towards data-driven governance, is first the availability of data in digital format. That becomes the first prerequisite step, and in a lot of the cases that becomes a challenge. So there are use cases where you can look at student marks and sort of predict how their results are going to be in the higher classes. So use cases on these lines have been or predicting whether they might drop off or not. These sort of use cases have been done in pilots in some states in India, on the southern states. But for the purpose of these pilots, they had actually digitized the data to make these pilots. But if a lot of the interaction of the students, the marks, and their record and on the other things are available in digital format, that helps them in doing that. When we looked at the agriculture sector, a lot of the data that is there at a farm level is not available in digital format. So there's a mention about some of these technologies, technologies in this year's budget, but rolling out these technologies on the ground becomes the major challenge. I think once you get those data, then building the predictive models with this data can be done with engineers. But how do you collect the data? How do you send the advisory back to the farmers and closing the loops? That becomes one of the major challenges. So access to digital data, and then if there is some insight or advisory that is generated, how can that insight and advisory be passed on to the citizen in their local language? Because local language is something that we have to keep in mind, because not everyone that we are looking for, maybe a Anganwadi worker or say a farmer, might know how to read English or Hindi. So that's one. And first is the reading, and the other one is that they might not even know reading or writing in the first place. So if some of this advisory can be made available through voice-based services, those are some of the things that we have to look into in delivering technologies, how those loops can be closed. I think what we have worked upon, a lot of the pilots have worked upon solving the middle part of the puzzle, but closing the whole thing needs from the end to end is something that needs to be focused on.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. Your comments on this?
Yeah, see, because it's linguistic things, as Professor Avik Sarkar told, so it becomes a very challenging thing to map this data. We have data in all the each and every application, but when we try to map it, it becomes very difficult. Same Abhishek will be spelled something differently in different names. So one guy is having same name, which have different spellings in different applications. So since we are moving towards an enterprise architecture, the first job is to basically create different hubs. First, people hub, which will be catering to all the citizens of my state, which Andhra has done a lot because they had that SRDH. Because the moment Aadhaar was created, they created one state resident depository hub. So we are also trying by taking electricity, ration card, Aadhaar card, and voter ID card data, but it becomes very difficult. Now we need to also map the family. Fortunately, West Bengal have a ration card which have the family details. Other states don't have; they have a single individual ration cards. We map the families also because most of the schemes are with respect to the families. So we need to create different data hubs which will be used by all the departments such as People Hub, Land Hub, IoT Hub, GIS Hub, and Entity Hub. These are the 5 main pillars of enterprise architecture. So apart from that, if you are able to map this entire thing, I'll just take an example of my previous experience in 2007-8. SAS came and they, in Reliance Communications, when I was a program manager, SAS came and they told that we will create an application, predictive analytics, and will tell you who all subscribers are going to churn out from your network. After a long exercise of 1 year, the output was that whoever has not done a recharge in last 6 months will go out. Whoever has basically not done an outgoing call will churn out. So this has no value to us. But the main problem was that they had no data. Unless and until you capture the entire communication of that particular subscriber with respect to their call center things, complaints, network dropouts, you will not be able to give a predictive outcome. So this AI, ML and everything, everything is based on data. It depends on the quality of data. Unless you have a quality of data, you will not be able to give a quality output. So we need to basically collect this data as the Sarkar told with respect to digitization, and then it has to be mapped with respect to all the linguistic challenges. So there are many tools available now with respect to we can map those data. So this is the way we can.
My last question, the government has been collecting large amount of data right now, and we have seen that with large amount of data, various digital platforms could be created. In your views, how the government can store, process, and analyze this data so that it enables government departments in improving policy making, leading to better project management, enabling of welfare schemes and citizen service delivery. Dr. Sarkar, you want to share your views?
Yes, so I think government has to start doing analyzing this data and then maybe putting them in public domain by doing anonymization of the data, so that the analysis of the data is not limited to the government itself, and the overall society can work on it. Academics, startups can work on it, and the range of other things are possible. So I'll give you a quick example. So before this, I had worked extensively with the Singapore government. For every land sale or rental agreement that happens in Singapore, they put the data in the public domain. Every day, whatever is happening is putting in the public domain. They put the data in types of the PIN code, the size of the house, the type of the house, like this is a government housing, a bungalow, or a condominium, and then what was the rental or the sale value. This helps in creating lot of apps, and the real price discovery happens. There are a lot of data points on healthcare, on education, on the trade, on other transactions, which are not available in the public domain. If some of this data is available in public domain, it will help the ecosystem quite a lot in developing these applications based on them. Government have access to some of the data, but they are say some of the states like in the south or say Bengal or Karnataka are doing things with them, but a lot of the other states are not even scratching the surface of working with data. A lot needs to be done, and the first step is to make the data available by using the data.
Thank you. Dr. Roy, your views?
See, I agree with Sarkar and government has come down with many open APIs where we are trying to share the data, but there's a concern of privacy also with respect to this data. So both the things has to be balanced. We are struggling to get the things, because with this use of data, all the private operators are creating many AI tools which can control our motions and all. There are many theories which are against AI. I'm in support of AI, but we need to take care of those privacy segment of the citizens also with respect to the data. And definitely, as I told you, we need to match the data. We have data, but in different formats for different applications. We need to map it and create those 5 hubs, which I told you. As of now, earlier in our state data centers, we had basically servers for each and every application. So now we are moving towards cloud. Even if we're moving towards cloud, it's a silo. So we need to map it and create it. We have already started the process where we're trying to create those people hub to start with. But sharing all the data in public hub, it will be a challenge. We need to think on the Privacy Act. And for example, with the health cards, we are trying to capture the entire diagnostics of a citizen. But if it is exposed to the public, it will become a big challenge. So we need to balance it out. I'm not against sharing of data, but we need to balance it out. This is from myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarkar and Dr. Roy, for this excellent views on this topic. With this, we come to the end of this session. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for finding out time for this session. I hope you got a lot to learn. I got a lot to learn from Dr. Sarkar and Dr. Roy. I hope you have a pleasant day ahead. Many thanks.